Good evening and welcome to the Women's Economic Entrepreneur Webinar for Thursday, May 28th, 2020. My name is Kevin Johannes and I'm the Director of Communications for the National Council of Negro Women. I'd like to welcome you all here. We've been doing this now for the past 6 years, helping women and everyone be informed about being more effective business owners. The idea is to grow our network, also grow our information using experts and members of the NCNW. This evening, we have a special guest. We worked with her before, and we always like her to come and give us some great information. Miss Camille N. Simpkins is a business development officer for Wells Fargo Bank. And I would have to tell you that if you've not gone to hands-on banking online or had your children go there to learn how to deal with money, you are missing a treat. I did it. I also had my children do it. Wells Fargo has that as a part of their nonprofit process to help people understand finances much better. Going back to Ms. Simpkins, she supports businesses with 2 million to 10 million annual gross revenue. Wells Fargo also offers small, corporate, and not-for-profit institutional clients with a broad range of banking solutions, inclusive of treasury management, foreign exchange, specialty financing, credit card processing, and payroll. Now, on a personal note, Ms. Simpkins is a Spartan. She hails from Norfolk State. As a pirate, I'm just not going to say anything at all. She's a servant in her community. She works with many different organizations, including the Blue Elephant Group, Dope Girls Incorporated, the National Urban League, Pennsylvania Conference for Women, Independent Business Alliance, and of course, the National Council of Negro Women. Hailing from West Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, and we also say sisterly affection, I'd like to welcome Miss Camille N. Simpkins. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much. And good evening to the members and actually extended family of the National Council for Negro Women. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I hope you are all safe and well at home, both yourselves as well as your families. Cheers to you if you are taking advantage of happy hour at this time. And, thank you. I appreciate being here. So I just want to start by saying that the number of women and minority-owned businesses continues to grow. Over the last 10 years, minority business enterprises accounted for more than 50% of the 2 million new businesses that were started here in the United States, and it created about 4.7 million jobs.
That is amazing.
Yes, probably some changes to those numbers since we've been sitting in this pandemic, but still something to tip our hats to.
Before we go any further, let me do a technical housekeeping.
Okay.
Some of us have been on GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting before. Some of us haven't. If you have, then you know that you can ask a question by typing the questions down in the question panel on your menu, which should be to your right on your computer or on your screen, as well as you can hit the hand, so that way we know you have a question. Before we get started any further, there are also a couple of polls that we'd like to get you to answer. And in that same drop-down menu, there are 2 poll questions. Please take a moment out and answer those as we go through this evening, because we'll be using them for information. I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So there are now more than 4 million women and minority-owned companies here in the United States, with annual sales that total close to $700 billion. So if you're not clapping right now, and if you're not excited about the potential for your business, you should be. Yet, despite that growth, there is still a disparity when it comes to access to capital, contracting opportunities, and other entrepreneurial development opportunities for women and minority-owned businesses. Now, while the numbers of minority-owned businesses are a source of optimism and hope for the future, more still needs to be done to encourage and strengthen the women and minority-owned business community. That's why ensuring that all small businesses have access to federal contracts, access to capital, and the technical assistance needed for success remains a top priority for the National Council for Negro Women and Wells Fargo. Diversity and inclusion is one of the nation's greatest strengths, and diverse small business ownership is essential to our nation's continued economic growth and success. Now, while we have those numbers would suggest that we're solidifying our own seat at the table, there is a lot of work to be done, and tonight I will share key tips in being able to access capital. And what I want you to think about as we go through the presentation is that initially when you think about access to capital, you're thinking about financial support. But I also want you to think about access to capital also being people, and also being resources and thought partners. So a lot of what we cover tonight, we'll talk through capital being, yes, finance, because that's important, but people, thought partners, as well as resources and information. So with that, I think we will move on to the polling question so we can get an idea as to the flavor in the room.
Okay, our first polling question was, how many of you have, I'm trying to answer this and bring it up at the same time.
Okay.
How many of you are in seed, startup, maturity, or expansion stage of your business? And if you take a moment, please, and answer that question, we will collect responses and we can see them on the screen. All righty, let's see here. It says that 74% are in startup mode, 11% are in maturity, and 15% are in expansion.
Okay. Repeat that for me one more time. You said what percent is startup?
74% is in startup, 11% in maturity, and 15% in expansion.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we have no seedlings. All right. Okay, that's good to know. And then we had one additional polling question.
Yes. Did you apply for the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program loan? And if you take a moment to answer that question. All right. And the results are on the screen. 81% said no, 19% said yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's some good information. Thank you very much. Okay, so let me turn off this. And I think I could move this. Oh, no, don't want to do that. All right, I want to move this pane so you guys can't see it. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate, again, your time and attention this evening. I hope that you are able to see the Managing Business Credit presentation that I'm going to provide to you tonight. I think you can probably see this little screen here, and I'm trying to see if I can move it. I don't want to do that.
You're in the PowerPoint, but you're in the Adobe Acrobat presentation instead of the PowerPoint presentation. If you hit the there you go.
Okay, that's what we want. All right.
And now you can make that
this
by hitting
go here, go there.
There you go.
Now, can you still see this little box here that I can see on my side?
If you up top, next to the little save disk, 3 over to the right, top left corner. Move to your right.
Yeah.
No, don't click that one.
Ooh,
cancel that.
This one here?
Yes. Click that.
Okay, perfect. All right, here we go. Thank you. Okay. All right, perfect. So what I want to do is, I hope that you have your phones out. No, this isn't working for me. It's not letting me advance pages. Oh, there we go. Okay,
Use the arrow on your keyboard.
there we go. All right, thank you. So the slide that you should see right now is a celebration of you, and I'm going to tell you what that means. So women-owned businesses in the United States, there are more than 11.6 million firms that are owned by women, employing nearly 9 million people and generating 1.7 trillion in sales as of 2019. Women-owned firms account for 39% of all privately held firms and contribute 8% of employment and 4.2% of revenues. Now, to expand on that, businesses owned by women of color set the precedent at 5.4 million firms here in the United States. They employ 2.1 million people and generate 361 billion in revenues annually. You have secured your own seat at the table. So it's a celebration of you. So if you haven't done your check-in, I'm going to ask you to use the hashtags that you see here. One that is not listed that you must begin with is hashtag NCNW, hashtag Queenpreneur, hashtag I am an entrepreneurial queen, hashtag Wells Fargo support small business, and hashtag support small business. This is a celebration of you. So with that, we are going to move into the presentation. This is some of what we're going to cover tonight: managing credit, what potential lenders look for, the business credit life cycle, making sense of financing options, and then, as I mentioned earlier, free educational resources. As a business owner, your most valuable asset is good credit. But understand that strong credit isn't something that you simply have or don't have. Building credit is going to be an ongoing active process, and it's going to take careful management. Pretty similar to what we do with our personal credit report. The same holds true for small businesses. Now, we're going to take a moment to focus on the credit and financing needs of businesses like yours, because you, as the polling suggested, 74% startups, 11% are in the growth or maturity stage, and 15% expansion. We'll cover how credit and lending works, explore the possibilities of credit financing during each stage of the credit life cycle. We'll also look at how to make the most of credit opportunities, but we're going to talk about both traditional and non-traditional lending opportunities. Now, I mentioned this before, and it's worth repeating: credit is your first business asset. Even before you go to production, even before you make your first product, you take your first sale, credit is your first business asset. Successful businesses at every level don't guess about it, they actively manage it. And that's what we're going to discuss tonight. Now, I mentioned making the most of your financing opportunities. You don't want to guess about it. You really want to manage it. But how do we go about doing that? So the first thing is to provide working capital. It's also so that you can streamline the growth of your business and take advantage of many opportunities. All right, I want to collapse this. Ooh. There we go. All right. So businesses rely on credit to provide working capital, support plans for growth, and prepare for unexpected emergencies and opportunities when they present themselves. But you have to have a clear understanding of your needs. And that comes through preparation, resources and information, and understanding what the appropriate finance option is to run your business smoothly and to make it grow. Now, I am a business development officer with Wells Fargo. And I would imagine that most of you, because some of you have applied for the Paycheck Protection Loan, you have a business relationship. So I want to just share with you how your banker can become a valuable resource to you. Because as I mentioned, access to capital is also resources, but it's also people. Allow them the opportunity to conduct a business financial review. Now, and I know sometimes we sit down with a banker and they start through a series of questions, and it sometimes feels intrusive. But let them in. Let them understand why you started your business, how you started your business. What's the story? What's the dream behind your queenpreneurship? Because they're there to listen to understand, and they shouldn't be there to listen to respond. They should not be throwing products and services at you until they have a clear understanding of what your business does. You want them to be able to review your business situation because every situation is unique. Because whether or not you're a seedling, you're a startup, you're in growth, you're in expansion, it looks different in each lifestyle stage. And don't be afraid to discuss what your future business goals are. You could be 6 months away from it. You could be 12 months away from it. You could be 3 to 5 years away from it. Share your story. Narrate your story for the banker so that they have a clear understanding of how they can help you, what resources they can provide for you, who they can connect you with. That is so important. All right, having a little bit of technical difficulty with my computer. All right, why does this want to work? There we go. Okay. So businesses have a credit profile. And you're probably wondering, what is a credit profile? Not a credit report, but a credit profile. It isn't just a number or a report. It includes information about your business practices, your bank relationships, past and current financial activity, and even the way that you present your financial history and future. In short, it's everything a lender sees in you and your business. So we're going to go through some steps so that you can take and build your credit profile. The first thing that you want to do is start by creating a sound financial footing. Even if you have no immediate plans to apply for a credit card, a line of credit, or a loan, starting to take the steps to build your credit worthiness and the name of your business is so important. Now, when you're in that startup phase, or even when you went from the seedling to the startup phase, okay, my computer keeps freezing. Bear with me, you guys. I'm sorry.
You can use the arrows on your keyboard to also make it advance or
Yeah, no, I
remote.
think I'm in. It probably would have been easier for me to do the webinar. There we go. Okay. It sounds simple, but creating a sound financial footing is the basics of a business and checking account or a business checking and savings account. A strong payment history, and it's important for you to review your personal credit profile yearly and clear up any issues immediately. Now, we talk about your business and checking account. And for most of you, when you were probably in your seedling, or even some of you that may be in your startup, you're probably utilizing your personal account for some of your business expenses and haven't yet established the business checking account because you still feel that you're fairly new. And you might be using, certain mediums such as, Cash App and PayPal. If you have given your business a name, and if you have created a brand for your business, it's no longer personal. You have a small business. You're a small business owner. You're a women business owner. And for some of the men that may be on the line, you're a minority business owner. And for that reason alone, you need to establish your business checking and savings account. I generally recommend to my business clients that you should have a separate account for your payroll and your taxes. Because on a monthly basis, you should be setting aside at least 10% of your gross revenue to be able to support your taxes. And of course, if you're using, some type of Intuit system or maybe a payroll system through your financial institution or credit union, you want to separate your payroll and your tax account. And for those of you that applied for the payroll protection program, you probably understand the importance of having that separated and having to gather all of that information for the requirement of the loan. But then more importantly, you're going to have to gather that information again for the loan forgiveness portion of the loan. So you want to have your operating account, but you should also separate your payroll and your tax into one account as well. And if you have the ability to set aside savings, it's so important in case of emergency. Did we ever think we'd be going through a pandemic? And your savings doesn't have to be a large number. I remember when I was started out as a branch manager, I would always have clients who would come in and they would say, you know what, Camille, I'm going to start a savings account as soon as I get my income tax. And I would say, well, why do you want to do that? We have to understand that savings is the ability to take something small and make it great. You can start your savings with a minimal amount. It shouldn't have to be a portion of your tax return. It could be the same dollar amount that we're spending on a daily basis or weekly basis, bi-weekly or monthly basis for one of your indulgences. Mine is a caramel macchiato from Starbucks. I've saved a couple dollars since we've been in the pandemic, but yeah, that could be your small savings. And when you're in your startup, also, the maturity stage and expansion, without even looking at traditional credit from a bank, you can start to begin a strong payment history through your suppliers and your vendors. The first piece of homework I'm going to give you is to reach out to your suppliers and your vendors who you've been with for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months or longer, and ask them, is it a way for them to begin for you a credit account? Because if you're already paying them, invoices at the end of the month, they might extend to you an additional period of maybe 15 days. So your invoices would go from 30 to 45. You're establishing credit with the vendor. They already know that they're going to receive payment. Some of your vendors might even provide you with some built-in discounts if you have a good month where you're able to provide them with payment on a net term of maybe 15 days. But you can begin to create payment history for yourself and your credit profile through your suppliers and your vendors. And the reason why I say it's so important for you to review your personal credit report, because although you've established a credit profile for your business, lenders are still going to look at your personal credit because that's where you initially established your credit rating. Are your payments on time? What does your outstanding debt look like against what your approved amounts are? And if you're having difficulty making those payments on time, one of the things I suggest is setting up automatic payments so that the payment is always on time. So understand that your personal credit report is still a large part of the future of your business. And a lot of the disparities that we see within the minority and women-owned business community is a direct correlation to personal credit reports. It is still a factor. You're granted a free credit report once a year, free of charge, from all 3 credit reporting agencies. So Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And most of your credit card companies will provide you with free access to your credit reports through their credit reporting processes. And if you're utilizing services such as Credit Karma, you also have access as well. If you look, and you should be looking at your credit report on a monthly basis. It updates within a 30-day period. And if you notice any issues, you want to clear those up immediately. And please understand that there are no credit repair services that you should be paying for. Credit repair basically is just you noticing something on your credit report that doesn't match, and you writing a letter to that credit reporting agency of what the dispute is. They'll research the dispute and update your credit report for you. You can do that free of charge. Please, under any circumstances, should you not be putting out money for a credit repair service because it doesn't exist. You are the credit repair service. Now, there are resources that the National Council for Negro Women can provide you. There is no charge for that. So when you think about having access to capital, that is capital. Money that you would have put over here to clear up your credit report when that's something that you can do free of charge. That could be the foundation or the beginning of your savings account. All right. So the next one is banking strategically. Okay, there we go again. It's easier to use my arrows, but that. Okay, technical difficulties here. All right. Now, we talked earlier about establishing your business checking and savings account. So when I talk about consolidating your bank relationships, that's what you should be consolidating. Personal expenses should be on the personal side, and your business expenses should be on the business side. Again, your strong bank history may support your creditworthiness. I started with Wells Fargo when we were First Union, and I think my first account might have been initially when they might have, I think they were core states. So it's just as important, the bank relationship that you have, because that is also supporting your credit worthiness. And you want to be able to demonstrate a consistent flow of funds. So when I said that you should have your operating account, so basically what that is your influx of funds, and then potentially your accounts receivable. So the funds that are going out to pay your distributors or to pay for marketing. So the bank wants to see you demonstrate what that consistent flow of funds is going to look like. And then more importantly, cultivating that relationship, the relationship that you have at the bank. So that is important as well. So understand that, the support that you have within your financial institution is another service that's free for you. So, the resources that they can provide, whether it be your business plan, whether it be opportunities relative to, taking on, short-term or long-term expenses, you want to do that through your bank relationship. And when I generally take on a new client, it's important that the client understands that in order for me to be the best thought partner, that we should at least connect by phone or by email at least once a month. And it's important for me to meet with my clients face to face. In this case, it's been through Zoom, but at least once quarterly. So the relationship that you have with your business specialist, your business banker, it is important that you are connecting with them either by phone or by email at least once a month, and face to face at least once a quarter. And, again, if it seems like they're being intrusive, it's because they want to have a clear idea about your business. So for you, you want to reciprocate that, and you want to be clear about whatever it is your situation is and what your goals are. And again, those goals could be 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, or a year to 5 years. Because you want to have the ability to be able to identify what your growth perspective is. So again, please, visit your banker regularly via email or by telephone once a month, and quarterly face to face. That is so important. Now, we talked about the credit report and you getting to know the credit reporting. And, it's the key elements of your credit report, our payment history, outstanding debt, credit utilization, and how long your credit has been established. Now, credit utilization is so important. And what that means is, so say, for example, you have a credit card and you have a $10,000 limit. And not just your credit card, but all of your credit accounts that are contained on your credit report. You want to maintain your utilization over a 30-day period at 35%. So your revolving credit lines, such as lines of credit, whether it's home equity or commercial real estate equity line, and your credit cards, over the course of a 30-day period, shouldn't be over 35%. So that's the barometer that you want to use when looking at your credit report, is 35%. That is so important. Now, your credit scores, of course, or your credit report, of course, generates this single number, but that number is all based on what your payment history is. So do you have any payments that are 30, 60, 90 days late? What your outstanding debt is, and how long your credit has been established. Also, understand that credit inquiries are important as well. So when we talk about credit inquiries, for example, when you think about, you getting your car or you getting your mortgage, or even your student loans, a lot of times you're going to several financial institutions or car dealerships to see who's going to give you the better rate. Now, you may generate, anywhere between 2 to 3 and upwards of 5 inquiries just in that one single process. But as long as those inquiries are for the same product, it won't affect your score as much. So they're considered what we call soft pulls, as long as it is for the same product. So for example, when you're searching for a car and you've went to 3 car dealerships, but you did that within a 30 to 60 day period, it won't negatively affect you as if you decided, you know what, I think I'm going to get a car month 1, and then you change your mind, and then you decide that month 6, now you're going to go ahead and get the car. Now, those 2 credit scores are going to be different. But if you're doing it within a 60-day period, the same with mortgages. So keep in mind, if you're applying for a like-minded product or service within a 60-day period, it will be a soft hit, so to speak, to your credit report than a larger number affecting your credit score. So that's important to know. So much like a diamond, there are 5 C's of credit. And we're quickly going to go through what the 5 C's of credit are. And the reason that this is so important is because this is what underwriters will look at, whether it's one of the larger financial institutions or a credit union. They're going to look at these 5 C's first, even before they have an opportunity to decide if whether or not it's going to be an approval or a decline, or even a counteroffer. The first, of course, being credit history, which we've spent a lot of time on. How you've handled past credit obligations. Collateral is important too, because your personal and your business assets may be able to serve as a backup source of repayment. So for example, when you go to buy a car, your collateral is that car. When you go to get your mortgage, your collateral is that mortgage or that real estate. Most financial institutions are looking for small businesses who have skin in the game. And basically, if they believe, if you've taken your personal assets and put it into your business, then they believe that you are a true believer of your business, of your product, of your brand. So that is so important. Capital. Again, talking about the personal investment in your business and any assets that can be turned into cash. Whether it's real estate, whether it's equipment, whether it's a vehicle, whether there are aspects of a savings account or a CD or a certificate of deposit that you have. You can utilize that as capital. We'll talk later in the presentation regarding unsecured versus secured lines of credit, and we're going to come back to this capital piece. And then conditions, everything that affects your ability to repay a loan, including internal and external factors. And I mean, we can all say that one of the major external factors that we're dealing with right now is this pandemic. COVID-19 is an external factor. Also, industry and economic trends, your customers, your competition. There could be new regulations that are governing your specific industry. Internal conditions include, what are your plans for the loan? Resources for carrying out your plans. But just as important, what's your experience and qualification that's going to help you succeed? So those are important. And then the last of the 5 C's is capacity. And this is very important. How your business will generate enough cash to repay the loan and any other commitments. This by far has to be the number one reason that there is such a disparaging number within the minority and women business enterprises for declinations is capacity. And I'm going to explain to you why. So capacity, again, is your ability to repay the loan. Lenders will want to see that your business can generate enough cash to repay the loan. So you have in your mind that you need this amount of money to be able to grow your business or expand your business. Profitability and cash flow determine what your capacity is for how much you need. A number off of the top of your head doesn't determine that capacity. Your cash flow and profitability does. Typically, lenders require what is called a debt service ratio of 1.2% to 1.5%. Now, basically, what this is your net operating income. So it's your net. After all of your expenses come out, your net operating income divided by what your annual debt service is. Now, your annual debt service is what your principal and interest payments are for a loan over the course of the year. So again, when lenders and underwriters are looking at your loan package, the thing that is so important is what your debt service ratio is. And again, that is your net operating income divided by what your principal and interest payments would be for the loan that you're seeking. I'm going to give you an example. If your net operating income is $25,000 and your annual debt service is $20,000, and again, that's your principal and interest payments that you're making on a loan within that year, then your debt service coverage would be 1.25%. In simple terms, it tells the lender or the underwriter that you have 25% more than is required to pay your annual loan payment. You want your debt service coverage no matter what to come in above 1, but it should come in higher because most lending institutions are looking for that 1.2 to 1.5, to cushion in case of emergencies or anything like that. So you have 25% more than is required to pay your annual loan payment. Capacity is the number one of the 5 C's of credit that would determine if whether or not you're going to be approved or not. Okay. So we're going to dive into additional aspects of what potential lenders look for. And this is specific to the package that you're going to put together for your lender or your underwriter. The most important is credit purpose. You want to be able to explain how you use the money and whether or not the amount is realistic for you. Credit history. Be able to describe your credit profile accurately to ensure there are no surprises. Again, what's so important about that is, understanding your credit ahead of time, because you don't want to be able to sit with an underwriter or your banker and they pull the credit report and, there are surprises. Company finances. I mentioned earlier, being able to demonstrate your ability to be able to pay the loan on time is critical. You need to be able to provide cash flow projections for at least 12 months that show that you're on top of your finances and can also account for seasonal variations as well and emergencies such as a pandemic. Application details. Don't underestimate the importance of a complete and correct application. You want to have your dates and your details right. You want to ensure that your sales and your revenue numbers match what's on your last year's tax returns. If you're applying for credit in the middle of a tax year, you want to ensure that your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet match. Again, going back to the members that applied for the PPP loan, how important was this process for you when you had to gather all your documents for the PPP loan? I mean, we started to take applications in March. Most 2019 business tax returns weren't completed yet. So most financial institutions were relying on your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet. The importance of those numbers weighed very heavily on how much you qualified for the PPP loan. So your application details are so important. Next, what I want us to do is take a look at each stage of the business life cycle so that we can start to look at questions and things that you should be thinking about as a startup, in your growth and maturity stage, and those that are right now thinking about expansion. Okay, I'm gonna just stick to my arrows because they work much better. Okay. Now, before we start to look at the startup phase, just want to add to the cash flow exercise, the acceleration of your inflows and how you should be monitoring your costs. And most of that, you're probably doing more now than you ever did before. If there was an opportunity for you to process your invoices quickly, if there was an opportunity for you to offer more payment options, you might have established additional payment options now that we are in the pandemic. And being able to process your invoices through, certain mediums that you wouldn't have used before. Another way to accelerate your inflows is, depending on your product or service, if it requires that you're purchasing supplies, whether it be through a vendor or a supplier, and it takes a lot of time and effort or the expense given the materials that you're using, you might want to think about a prepayment or taking pre-orders where maybe there's a 10% down payment that they're providing, or they're providing half up front. So once we come out of this pandemic, we're going to have to think about what our new normal is, and you may have to change aspects of your business to accelerate your inflow, and think about the time and effort that goes into your product or service and your brand, and does it substitute, and does your reviews, your 5-star ratings provide you with that leverage to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to ask that you put half down. So as you start to think about what your new normal is, you're going to have to change what your acceleration looks like. If you didn't take credit cards before, if you were a cash only business, then I'm quite sure that you've started to think about options such as Square or PayPal, just to accelerate your inflows. It's so important. And if your business generally requires cash, most business owners who start to look at other ways in which they can accept payment, you increase your revenues annually by 35%. So think about that as well. You're monitoring your costs more now because your inflow may have decreased a bit, or you're monitoring your costs more because your inflows may have increased. So you want to be able to track your bills and your inventory, and you can do that through Intuit. There are other programs that would allow for you to be able to track your bills and your inventory. You can do it through an Excel spreadsheet, but it's so important. And then, of course, knowing your payroll obligations. And for those of you that applied for the payroll protection loan, you have this 8-week period where you're going to start to provide your documents to your financial institution for the loan forgiveness portion of it. And of course, 75% of that can be used towards your payroll costs, and then the additional 25 towards your rent and other expenses. Are you tracking that? When the bank goes to ask you for those documents, you want to be able to have that information available so that that loan can be forgiven. And you're watching your outflows closely. And the other reason I mentioned earlier, where you want to be able to have a payroll and or tax account, because you don't want to have your outflows and not know where the money is to be able to report the taxes. Again, as you're starting to think about what that new normal is, you might have created a rewards program or volume discounts. For those of I've seen a lot of businesses support masks and different type of pandemic supplies, and the more you buy, the better the discount. So as you start to think about your new normal, these 3 are so important to you: accelerating your inflows, monitoring your costs, and watching your outflows. And we talked about covering your taxes. And here it says, can you cut expenses? You've probably cut some expenses and never thought that you would have to. Even for my organization, probably now as we start to think about those, leases and everything that are coming due, more organizations are going to be thinking about the ability to have their employees work from home and being able to cut their expenses, because I feel like I'm producing more being at home than I would when I was in the office. Are you getting the value from every relationship that you had, whether it be internally or externally? Where, in uncertain terms, where right now we're challenging everything that is said and everything that is done. And that's important for your business as well. Now, we don't have any seedlings, so I'm going to run through the seed portion of it. We're going to go right to startup. I talked about there being both traditional aspects of lending as well as non-traditional. And as we go through the life stages, we're going to talk through a lot of those. I mentioned earlier that, generally underwriters and financial institutions are looking for your skin in the game. Do you believe in your product or service? Do you believe in your brand? When your dream came into fruition, did you believe that you could just walk into a bank and get financing? Or did you start small and kind of build? Well, that's building the foundation for your startup. Personal and family assets. It's easier to get a business credit card when you're in your startup phase than it is when you're not. Most financial institutions do require that you're at least 13 months old, but you will find that there are some lenders who only require that you're 3 months or you're 6 months. So a business credit card is a good way to build that solid foundation. Outside investors, your circle of friends, your center of influence, those that pushed you to move towards your dream. And one that's not listed here is crowdfunding. And crowdfunding has become, or when we think about crowdfunding, it's, your GoFundMe and your Facebook mediums that we didn't have before. Your parents and your grandparents, they refer to them as rent parties. So my mother always says that, the modern day rent party is GoFundMe or Facebook. You have a village that stands behind your brand. That village bought into your product or service initially, and that's what motivated you to become this queenpreneur or this minority business owner. So crowdfunding is very important when you're in that startup phase. And microlenders. There are microlenders. What's interesting about microlenders are they're generally part of an umbrella within your local economic development corporation. The financial institutions understand that there is a large need for financing, and not everyone qualifies for traditional lending. So financial institutions will then provide grants to not-for-profit organizations, such as the economic development corporations within your local communities, both local as well as regional, to be able to provide these micro-lending opportunities for you. With those micro-lending opportunities comes support in establishing, building, and repairing your credit report. So when I said earlier, you shouldn't be paying for a credit repair service, because there are resources that are available to you free 99, free of charge within your local economic development corporations. And believe it or not, there's a large amount of them within the community colleges. Oh, excuse me, your local community colleges. Excuse me for 1 minute. Ooh, thank you, I'm back. I'm in Philadelphia, and the Community College of Philadelphia partners with Goldman Sachs 100 Small Businesses. Oh, excuse me. And there are resources available through your community colleges and also a lot of the universities. So for example, University of Penn has small business support and incubators. And again, that financing comes from the larger financial institutions that realizes that there is still a segment within the small business community that don't qualify for traditional lending, but to be able to provide our segment with additional resources and financing, those are available to you. So I implore you to do the research for economic development corporations in your local and regional communities, your community colleges, as well as the colleges and universities. Within their websites, there's usually information relative to small business support and incubators. And the resources and the connections are invaluable for a startup. And not just so much for a startup, also when you're in that growth phase, because they can help you create that credit profile and that financial package. So moving into the growth phase, you're moving your company forward. You're 2 years old or more. There's a demand for your products and your services. Your customer experience lights your brand on fire. Your 5-star rating is only going to increase the business year over year. Even in smaller increments, week over week and month over month. So now, how do I move my company forward? And you start to think about, business lines of credit. For those of you that are starting to think about what that new normal is, as opposed to having a storefront, does it make sense for deliveries? Do I need to produce more? So now, do I have to have equipment, or should I purchase a vehicle? Do I need a larger sum of money up front So do I need to start to think about loans? Most of you have looked at SBA.gov and you've been inquiring about, the SBA loans and what does that look like for a small business? Those of you who actually applied for the PPP loan. Now, I know you've been on SBA.gov a lot. And when you get to the realization that what you're paying your landlord for your lease, and when you go to do your tax returns every year, and the amount of money that you spent, and the realization that you could own your own commercial property and grow your business, that's happening for you right now in this growth phase. And those of you that are in the maturity phase, your net operating income is growing. So now is a perfect opportunity for you to start to pay down debt. Maybe pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, you're thinking about refinancing your commercial real estate. Or you thought, I've never needed it before. Maybe I should have an equity line of credit just in case of emergency. Just in case what we're experiencing now, we're going to also experience in the fall. And you're expanding. For some, the pandemic might have propelled you to heights that you never knew. And again, you're starting to see those same reoccurring financing options. Should I think about a commercial real estate? Do I have longer term expenses now because I'm thinking about potentially I need new equipment or maybe vehicle financing? And when I spent all that time at SBA.gov researching the parameters for PPP, I know a little bit more about the SBA 7A and 504 programs. Even when your business reaches maturity, your business will never stand still. And you know this to be true, going from a seedling to a startup, to seeing the growth, to becoming more mature, to now thinking about expansion, you're not standing still. And your focus at every stage, you're always wanting to be ahead of the competition and improving your efficiencies. Strategic funding. Because yes, maybe I should get a commercial vehicle. Maybe I should think about that real estate. And, so there is when we talk about what that traditional lending looks like, going from your growth to your maturity to your expansion. Of course, you all know that in your startup phase, you had to be a little bit more creative. So again, the takeaway is I want you to research your local economic development corporations, your community colleges, and the colleges and universities. The other thing that's important is when you start to think about financing is understanding the difference between secured and unsecured. But even before we go through the secured and unsecured, I want to talk about short-term versus long-term financing. And I want to go back a slide. Here under growth, your first bullet point says business line of credit. And the third bullet point is business term loan. And oftentimes I'm asked the differences between the two. So I want you to understand what short-term credit is versus long-term credit. A business line of credit should only be sought for short-term expenses. And short-term expenses are anything that you need to purchase that's going to take you less than or anywhere between 15 to 30 days to pay for. A business line of credit is a revolving credit line, and it is very similar to your credit cards. It's revolving. So you start out with a set amount. Of course, what you use through that month, you pay down, and it goes back into your original amount. This should only be used for long-term expenses. Short-term, I'm sorry. If you're making a purchase that is going to take you a year or more to pay for, then you should be thinking about a business term loan. A business term loan is similar to your home mortgage. Business lines of credit should only be used in cases of emergency or short-term expenses that won't take you more than 15 to 30, sometimes 45 days to pay for. Financial institutions require a cycle down. And what a cycle down means is that over a course of 30 days, you're bringing your line of credit down to zero, or what we talked about earlier, that 35% utilization. So for those of you that are in your growth or your maturity stage and you currently have a business line of credit, and let's say that you have 25,000, and you go to the financial institution and you want to increase to an additional 25,000, and you were declined. Most oftentimes, the declination reason is because of your utilization, that you're using the business line of credit for long-term expenses versus short-term. Now, and again, when we talk about the business term loan, that should only be used in instances where whatever it is that you're purchasing is going to take you a year or more to pay off. With the term loan, we generally give you the funds up front, and then you have a fixed payment, your principal and your interest, and you pay it over the course of whatever your fixed payment is. You know, generally 5 years for equipment or vehicle financing or working capital, 10, 25, maybe 30 years if you're looking at a commercial real estate. But it is important that you understand the difference between short-term and long-term credit. Something that's going to take you up to 45 days to pay for should be short-term, a year or more, long-term. And then with that, we're going to go back to the secured versus unsecured, and it'll make more sense. Secured loans are backed by collateral. It could be cash, equipment, or real estate. Here it says it can be personal or business, and yes, that is correct, because a secured loan on the personal side is generally a vehicle financing or your home mortgage. Unsecured requires no collateral, and it's generally a credit card or a business line of credit. And it does depend on your credit and how strong your cash flow is. And again, going back to that debt service coverage. In your seedling and secured stages of your business, secured credit cards are available to you from certain institutions and credit unions. So it allows you the opportunity to be able to establish credit by putting up your cash. The bank will in turn provide you with a credit card or even a line of credit secured against your cash so that you can create a credit profile and a foundation for your credit worthiness. So security is very important within your seedling and your startup. Sometimes your growth stage as well. And then as you start to move through maturity, growth, and expansion, then you're more likely to get approved for an unsecured product or service. So again, finding the financing that's right for you. Credit cards, when you're in your seedling startup, also growth, they're always going to help you within your maturity stage as well and expansion. And if you need to build or repair business credit, you want to do that with the secured options. Lines of credit are revolving sources of funds. They can be unsecured or secured by collateral, but they should be for short-term expenses only. Term loans have a fixed term, which means that the funds are provided to you up front and you have a fixed payment, which includes both your principal and your interest. They also can be unsecured or secured. And then SBA loans are government guaranteed. They're not issued through the SBA, they're issued in partnership through financial lending institutions. They do require that you're at least 13 months old. There are some opportunities or solutions that provide for a lower down payment. SBA loans are a great option if you are thinking about commercial real estate. They're also a great option if you're in your mature or expansion. But understand that the SBA does not give out loans to start up a business. You do have to be at least 13 months old. And in most cases, you have to be at least 2 years old. But it's a great option if you've been thinking about commercial real estate because it provides you options for a lower down payment. Variety of purposes. It could be to buy out a partner. It could be to expand your business, for equipment or vehicle financing. And there are fixed and/or adjustable interest rates. And you can go to sba.gov to look at the various options they have available. Now, I mentioned earlier about the non-traditional options relative to lending. Because if you find yourself repairing your credit or you don't think that your cash flows right now support going to a larger institution, then here we're going to talk about some of the options that are available to you from the standpoint of being a little creative and thinking outside the box. Seller financing, I find to be starting to increase, and it's relative to those of you that might be in the home care business or home health aides. Seller financing basically are organizations that will provide you with an advance of funds based on your invoices. So if you're looking to make payroll or there was an emergency, seller financing will purchase your invoices, advance funds to you anywhere between sometimes 70 to 95%. And then once the invoice is paid, then they'll take their commission off the top, and their commission is usually anywhere between 1 to 5%, and then provide you with the difference. So I see a lot of seller financing, again, those of you that are home health aides or have a home care agency, I do see that more often. I also see it with some manufacturers. So it is an option to kind of think outside the box. Also true with factoring. They'll kind of look at what your invoices are and determine, if determine if there's some way that they can advance you the funds and then take a small fee. Okay. Seller financing also is relative to commercial real estate as well. So if you're looking to purchase commercial real estate, sometimes the seller will provide you with some financing. Equipment, large equipment manufacturers will provide you with some financing as well. And then if you're purchasing a vehicle through directly from the buyer, they may also provide you with some additional financing. Peer-to-peer lending we talked about earlier. GoFundMe accounts and kind of Facebook. So you have that village or community that stands behind your product or service, and they were the ones that motivated you to get in your business. I've been seeing a lot of that now in support of, certain businesses, especially for sole proprietors, hair salons and barbershops, and consultants. Peer-to-peer financing has become increasingly popular, and I think as we move into our new normal, it will be our way to support specific industries. Personal financing as well. But again, I only suggest this when you're in that seedling or startup phase. Some of you may have had to do it now that we're in the pandemic. And if that is the case, you want to make sure that your business pays you back personally. You don't want to commingle the funds. If you're using personal financing, then it should go from your personal account to your business account. And when your business is strong enough, your business should pay you back personally. And I can't stress enough the community development grants. Because when a traditional financial lender is not able to lend to you for whatever reason, they have made resources available within the community. And some of them aren't always grants. Some of them are micro lending options where there are limited interest rates. Grants aren't always available. But micro lending is, well, you'll have interest rates that are sometimes anywhere between 1% to 5%. I've seen some as low as 1, some in the middle at 3, and some at 5. Again, I do implore you to reach out to your economic development corporations, your community colleges, and your universities. They all have small business resource centers and incubators that can help you. Help you with your credit report, help you with your credit profile, help you get your package together so that you are credit worthy. Organizations such as the National Council for Negro Women, the United States Black Chamber of Commerce. Another one that's amazing is Accion, ACCION. They will provide you with services free of charge. And I provided you with statistics relative to women business enterprises and minority business enterprises. But understand that those numbers are only generated through the MBEs and the WBEs that have registered as WBEs and minority BEs. A women business enterprise certification and a minority business enterprise certification serves as the census for small businesses. More community support, more financing, more government and corporate opportunities, more procurement opportunities can be made available, but that's only if you're in that census. That is something that you should pay for. It opens up the opportunities for procurement in different companies, government and corporate opportunities, and you're going to see more and more of those as we come out into this new normal. Because when you look at the unemployment numbers, a lot of those businesses that these large corporations employed or consulted with may go away. It may create a mountain of opportunities for you. Invest in your business by becoming an WBE or a minority BE. And you want to look at the National Women's Business Enterprise National Council for more information. And with that certification comes resources that you're probably paying for right now that you can add back to your operating expenses. The other thing that I want you to do is I want you to log on to Wells Fargo Works for Small Business. There's a lot of information there. You should have a business plan. You should have a business plan as a seedling, as a startup, in your growth phase, in your mature phase, and expansion. When I mentioned earlier that you want to be able to go into either a non-traditional or traditional facility and be able to narrate the story of your business and increase the chances of you being approved. In order to understand your inflows and your outflows, you should have a business plan. And it's always going to be a working, breathing, living document. And now more than ever, you need to go back to the business plan and tweak it based on our new normal. There's an amazing business planning session on Wells Fargo Works for Small Business. It is available to you free of charge. It'll walk you through all aspects of the business plan. It'll have you thinking about aspects of your business that you never even thought of before. It will challenge you to take your business one step further. You've been thinking about something. You've been thinking about adding a product or a service or an opportunity, and you're just not sure how to go about initiating it and executing it. The business plan will help you with the strategy to do that, and it's free. It will take you through the application process. It'll provide you with mock applications so that you know what a lender is looking for. It'll take you through different types of finance options. It'll highlight some of those non-traditional lending opportunities and thinking outside the box that we talked about. There's a wealth of information there for you. And I challenge you to spend some time picking it apart. There's so much information there. There's a credit repair service there that's free of charge. So with that, I would like to say thank you. We have a soft stop at 8:30. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take any questions that you have.
Yes, we have a couple questions that have been written.
Okay.
First, we have several thank yous that this was an informative webinar, and they appreciate that. So I just want you to know that. First question was, what should an owner do when they have bad or no credit?
We talked about earlier the secured piece. I want you to reach out to your financial institution and take advantage of a secured option. When you say bad credit, if there are delinquencies, late payments that are in excess of 60 days, then I want you to go to Wells Fargo Works and work through their credit report options. There are letters there for you. So if there's something on your credit report that just doesn't jive and doesn't make sense, we've provided templates of letters that you can submit to the credit reporting agencies. And you want to submit them to all three. Now, when you say you have no credit, then the secured credit card option is helpful. There are other options that some financial institutions that are really big at Capital One being one of them, to help you establish credit if you have no credit. But bad credit is something else. So take a look at Small Business Works and pull some of those credit templates. Yeah, if I'll give you my information afterwards, if it's something that you want to discuss offline, I can kind of walk you through what that process looks like.
Okay, someone says some lenders want people to have a business account before they accept the PPP application. My husband and I have an account with a major bank such as Wells Fargo, but my business account is in another small banking institution such as a credit union. Any recommendations?
Yes, unfortunately, well, you do have to have, one of the requirements of the PPP loan was that you had to have an established relationship with the financial institution that you were submitting your application for. And you had to have an established relationship with them as of February 15th of 2020. Now, there are some lending institutions that don't require that you have an account with them. One of them was Republic Bank. There are some fintech firms. So if you go to sba.gov, they'll be able to outline for you what institutions don't require that you have an account. But looking at the larger institutions such as Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase and PNC, there was a requirement that you had to have a business relationship with them as of February 15th, 2020. So it sounds as if to me that the institution that you have your small account with did not participate in the PPP loan. And you can answer that later if you want me to expand upon that.
Okay. Someone asked, can you explain a little more what peer-to-peer lending is?
Yes. So peer-to-peer lendings are small business forums. Sometimes you'll find them on LinkedIn. You'll find a lot of them within Facebook communities, GoFundMe events. But peer-to-peer lending is generally if, for example, I'm starting to see a lot of peer-to-peer lending with hair salons and barbershops. Because again, you're a sole proprietor. Those businesses were shut down first. A lot of states haven't received the directive to fully open. So you want to go through, the best thing that you want to do is kind of go through some of the Facebook communities. The other thing that you want to do is look at the local chamber of commerces within your state or city, because some of them have been listed there as well. And basically,
Okay,
it is like-minded individuals within your industry, specific to your industry, that are in a better position than others to be able to provide support.
The next person said, I was laid off last year and just started an LLC to do some things my company was doing. However, I really need to get off the ground and need help. I'm going to say that Wells Fargo Works might be the perfect thing for that person to check into.
Wells Fargo Works is amazing. If you are an LLC, you do want to start there first. But the other thing that I would suggest is reach out to your community college. There is most likely some organizations that can provide you with continued support because you're still in that startup phase. So you are an LLC, and it sounds like you might be less than a year old. But the Wells Fargo Small Business Works will answer any questions that you have and take you closer to your growth and your maturity stage.
Well, that is all the questions we have, and I'm trying to get our Director of Programming, Ms. Paula Novell-Lewis, to come on to close out for us.
I'm here. Thank you so much, Johannes. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us for this very important webinar tonight. I hope that you took copious notes, because I did, and that you download the PowerPoint. I'm sure that you found something useful in the presentation tonight. I started these webinars about 6 years ago because of work that I did with the Department of Labor's Women's Bureau, as well as the Small Business Administration. And I started it because I knew that minorities and women, especially minority women, would not get the kind of information that you have gotten tonight free of charge. I know that many small entrepreneurs went to the banks and went to SBA even, and did not get complete information. You have gotten a thorough overview and with no holds barred. I hope this will help you to adjust your expectations and to realize some of your dreams. I want to thank you so much, Ms. Simpkins, for this presentation. It was very thorough and informative. I also want to thank Johannes for his work in helping to put this together, as well as Ms. Perkins and Ms. Green in our office for their technical assistance. And of course, we are grateful to the Coca-Cola Company and Wells Fargo for sponsoring this important program. Before we close this session, I want to invite you and challenge you to consider joining NCNW. Please visit our website at ncnw.org to learn more about our history and about our community-based sections in 32 states around the country. On our website, you'll also learn about our founder, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, who was born to enslaved parents and who, as many of you know, founded Bethune-Cookman University with $1.25. She became a confidant and advisor to President Roosevelt and Truman, and she was a special friend of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. She prodded Truman to integrate the military to include Black people and women. She founded Bethune-Cookman University, and she was the first woman chair of the board of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. This is the past that fortifies NCNW today. Many of you know that one of our most stellar leaders was Dr. Dorothy Irene Height. As a member of the Big Six civil rights group, she had a place on the podium at the March on Washington. But she decided that it was important for youth to have a place on that podium. So she gave up her speaking spot to a young man known as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we have some very important leaders, and we stand on their shoulders today. Dr. Height regularly consulted with President Obama, who named her as Mother of the Civil Rights Community. As we go through this pandemic, we cannot forget the inspiration of the past, but we must focus on the promise of the future. And you are that promise. And as business women, owners of the future of NCNW, you are also the future of the nation. We want to ask you and challenge you again, once you join NCNW, to join us for our convention, which will be online completely beginning in September. You'll get more information about that in the coming webinars. And registration will begin in June of this year. So in a couple of weeks, actually, June 19th. If you want to have more information about business ownership and growth, this session and most of our webinars are posted on ncnw.org under the program tab and on our webpage. And with that, I'll say to all of you, have a wonderful evening, stay safe, and stay in.
Thank you.